the Comfortable in Chaos Podcast. Strangle your demons and let's go.
Y'all need Jesus!
Oh, baby, you're jive talking, telling me lies. Jive talking, you wear a disguise. Jive talking, you're misunderstood, yeah. Welcome to the Comfortable in Chaos Podcast. I am your host, Eric Hellberg, and you know we're like Einstein over here, men. We have no special talents. We're just passionately curious about all things pertaining to men. How in the hell did we get here, and where is it that we want to go? And of course, we also now have a contingent of ladies who are listening and following this show because they would like to know, why is it that men do the things that they do? And or to better understand them, to better be more situationally aware. We dissect it all on this show, and we mix it with a little bit of hodgepodge of entertainment, history, warfare, chasing bad guys, et al. But you notice I started with the Bee Gees, because those doggone Gibb brothers were playing together well before David Covey was ever born. Can you imagine that? So for my Golden Triangle Republican women, it's get down time, because you girls can reminisce back to the good old days of the Bee Gees, pour you a glass of wine, share a few stories while I break into the present regarding some things happening in our wonderful part of the country and the state of Texas. And aren't we so tired of politicians and people devoid of character in politics jive talking us? It's so pervasive, it is putrid. But I would venture to tell you one of the recurring themes amongst my listenership, albeit I have a very diverse audience. We are going to be talking today about a very specific part of our country, but this is not isolated to where I live, this area in particular. You know, I just did a show on Trudeau and Canada and how abhorrent this man is. And we talk about governments and crazed rulers in other lands. We've walked it through in history. We've talked about past presidents. We're not isolated here, but we are directly combating it here right at this very moment. And so, since this show does go out to 45 countries, maybe 46 now, maybe we need to highlight our own area just to demonstrate some of the tomfoolery that goes on and what abuses of power actually happen. And most people would think, and a lot of listeners on my show, although not all, voted for President Trump. Actually, they voted for him twice. And what are they going to say? They're going to say this man was handcuffed. He wasn't allowed to do what he truly sought to do. He would have done an amazing job and was doing a great job had he just been left alone to do the will of the people. But the establishment unified against him. Why? Because it was him. He was blacklisted. He was isolated. In fact, he was bullied. Sound familiar? The very same people that hold tight to the hemline of Trump's garment are the same ones using the same tactics that were used against President Donald Trump against House Speaker and our representative in District 21, Dade Phelan. Isn't that ironic? So even though David Covey, Dan Patrick, Ken Paxton, our West Texas oil buddies, of course, they found a good boy. David Covey, oil and gas consultant. It's a match made in heaven. Although they champion Trump and say that he is still getting a raw deal and how unfair it was and how there was corruption in the mix, these stalwarts, oftentimes stalwarts of Christianity, let's call it a neoconservative Christian ideology. And what's amazing to me when you get these people who become so staunch in appearance and speech, upon closer examination, oftentimes it's not hard to find a few blemishes. I mean, do we begin with Paxton? Do we begin with these West Texas oil men? Hell, Dan Patrick, you should have stuck to sportcasting, man. I remember when I was a kid and you were talking about Earl Campbell and Dan Pastorini. How did you get to where you are? That's a question we all should be asking. And Ken Paxton, our lead law enforcement official in the state, the guy's been embroiled in more scandals than the damn Clintons. At least, I don't know, comparatively, right? And we still think he's a good fit? My goodness. Yeah. And now we know he is on a vendetta march. The unabashed Ken Paxton revenge tour, widely publicized in media outlets and broadcasts. Even his counsel, who financially supports the Texas Tribune, put it right in there that will occur. It's full-scale war in the Republican Party in Texas. Yes, indeed. A new neoconservatism. A new neo-Christian ideology. Well, I made a little Facebook post. That was actually yesterday or today. And in it, because David Covey, the pawn that they have chosen to represent their actions, he espouses Christianity. And hey, I'm a believer in our Lord Jesus Christ. I'm a believer in his Father in heaven. But I think he says, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. It's not your job, David Covey. It's not your job, Ken Paxton. Nope. It's not your job, Dan Patrick. And it's not the job of the money men behind you. Because without all of them, you guys are mute. In fact, every one of you guys that I just named are virtually impotent. David Covey posts more chapter and verse than just about anyone I've ever seen. And from all outward appearances, he looks like a very upstanding man. But the guy seems to know the Bible more in his short period of time than Joel Osteen's ever learned in his whole ministry. And I've learned to be very wary about people that carry chapter and verse on their sleeves instead of simply just living it out. I would call that moral relativism for my good theologians, people like David Covey, well versed in the Bible. What is moral relativism? Well, we will demonstrate our morals up until the point where we can receive self-gain, and then our morals get thrown out the window. And you do have something to gain, don't you, Mr. Covey? It's very interesting. Yeah, moral relativism. We're staunch until we can benefit and proffer, and then those go out the window. And why is it that they would be so unified in their opposition to our Speaker Dade Phelan? Is he in fact much like Trump? The guy whose water they carry and latched themselves onto? Is he similar in the fact that he creates fear in these individuals in these organizations? Why were they afraid of Trump? Why are they having such a visceral response to Speaker Dade Phelan? Has he somehow disrupted business as usual in Austin? And with the people that really play in the realms of power, i.e. in the funding? Has he stopped business as usual? Or maybe he has turned his flashlight on into some dark places. And typically when you expose people, and that of course is people who view themselves as very self-important, they don't like that. And you make enemies. Oh yeah, I know that they're upset. Dade didn't build the border wall yet. You don't think he's been working on it? Our boy Trump didn't build a wall. What happened to him? Why isn't the wall built? And since David Covey's a freedom fighter, I've worked practically everywhere in this country along the southern border. I'm talking literally where it begins around Otay Mesa and Tijuana, going in south of San Diego into the Pacific Ocean, coming out through California, and literally every inch of it in Texas. All the poorest parts of it, also where it is non-existent. So what happened? Why was Trump thwarted? Why do you want to thwart Speaker Dade Phelan? What are you boys actually afraid of? Now, I know a freedom fighter is not going to get afraid. I looked up freedom fighter, but I didn't find David Covey's name anywhere. I would venture to tell you that he's probably not much of a fighter at all. And devoid of pen and paper and external funding and backing or taxpayer dollars, Ken Paxton ain't no fighter either. They need the security details of those good old West Texas oil billionaires to protect them. Oh yeah, because I heard that David Covey, he said in an interview he was going after the head of the snake. The snake being our own district rep, our House Speaker. Now, you know, in order to go after the head of a snake, you have to go after snakes. And I would say the biggest challenge that David Covey has probably undertaken in his life at this time is maybe 1 hour martinizing how much starch to put in his Wranglers, maybe paying extra shipping to get his new Tacova sent to him. Come on, give me a break, man. What heads of snakes have you ever cut off? I have hunted men, been hunted by men, and cut off the head of many a snake. I don't see that capability in you, David Covey. And left to your own device, you certainly don't have it. Lieutenant Governor Patrick, left to your own device, you certainly don't have it. AG Paxton, give me a friggin' break, guys. There is nothing worse, and this is a show primarily for men, than a man who cannot fight his own battles. You know what typically happens when you have a weak man who uses other men to do his fighting and or even his own self-protection? You end up with a very scared and dangerous man. And these are the men that are coming after Speaker Dade Phelan. You know what's even crazier, since we're talking about issues of safety and protection? Can you imagine if good old David Covey hit the streets in Jefferson County and, oh yeah, the Democratic electorate alone, because remember, Dade Phelan actually worked with some Democrats, your fellow Texans, is probably as large as the electorate in total in Jasper and Orange counties. So let's say we got old David Covey. Now, he's a big fella. And I know when he probably gets over there at DQ or maybe Baskin Robbins and he gets that second scoop on his cone, that keeps him going for a while. So he's out block walking. He's out meeting potential constituents. And he is giving his firebrand conservatism, despite the fact that Dade Phelan presided over probably the most conservative legislature in Texans' memory. But for some reason, it wasn't enough. I'm not sure exactly why, but these people would never interface with a Democrat. Your neighbor, the teacher that instructs your kids daily, people that we interact with on a daily basis, people that are also looking for representation. If you are a history buff and or a student of it, go back in recent times and look at what happens when a group is marginalized and or they are then demonized because they think different. Then they no longer have representation. They're ostracized. And then they no longer have a seat at the table. What is true leadership? Bringing everyone together, and even if there is a different sentiment, well, what happens is you discuss things, you pontificate on things, and you make decisions based upon the greatest good for the greatest number. When you start making groups less than, you're on the road to destruction. Why would you be afraid to do so? And to be a freedom fighter like David Covey professes to be, whose freedom is it that he is truly fighting for? People that look like him, talk like him, act like him? Okay. Well, I tell you what, David Covey, Attorney General Paxton, you boys out in West Texas, hell, you too, Patrick. I need to find me, I love HJ schools. They're fantastic. But do I need to be in search of a all-Republican school district? Yeah, all the workers there, all the teachers, all the coaches, they're simply Republican. All right. How about an all-Republican church? We only have churches where Republicans can go. All right, what about an all-Republican restaurant? Only Republicans allowed. How about all Republican youth sports, right? We certainly can't have any children of Democrats playing ball, right? Do you see how absurd this is? David Covey, if you're truly an oil and gas consultant, have you ever taken on a Democratic client? Or you won't take their money, right? You just don't agree with them? Okay. I mean, you can work on creating your utopian bubble, and you can stay with like-minded people. People that all look the same, talk the same, act the same, as I just mentioned previous. But that's not what this country or the state is all about. And I don't think that's truly representative of your constituency, nor the great state of Texas. I mean, I have a good missionary friend in Orange County. In fact, he's been on the road with me when I actually was chasing bad guys and being chased by bad guys. You know, down where you're going to build the border wall, David, that hadn't been built yet. Okay. We just came off of a ball team, and we were headquartered there in Orange County, and parents were fantastic. The people were fantastic. We enjoyed playing there for a time. But none of the people that I've mentioned really ever look like you or talk like you. So how can that truly be representative of the people? And how do you have that without discourse? Challenging conversations, other people's viewpoints. It's really amazing because all these people just described are also Republican. So let's move away from the utopian ideal and let's get down to the pulse and/or the heartbeat of your district. And that's out in the communities and on the streets. So let's say you put on your black felt hat, had some of your buddies with you, and you're now out on the streets where everything truly happens and people plod along in their day-to-day existence, trying to make ends meet and do right by themselves and their families. And you espouse some of your ideals, some people good, some people bad, some people aren't going to get a seat at the table. And you know, out on those streets, I know you're a freedom fighter, David. But what would end up happening is there's 14-year-old boys. Now, you would call them trouble boys that can hand you your ass in a second, especially if it's just you and your partners by your lonesome. So then you're forced to make a call because, let's just say in Jefferson County, you need some assistance. Someone needs to now protect the freedom fighter. You're protecting freedom, but yet you haven't fought and you cannot fight by yourself. So that call goes into the Jefferson County Sheriff's Department. My God. But one of the best sheriffs in the state, Sheriff Zena Stevens, she's a Democrat. But when that 14-year-old has your ass pinned against a wall, are you going to take Janice's, Alday's, or Sullen's help? Because they work for a Democratic sheriff? Well, despite your tomfoolery, they would still come and help you. I could pick up that phone as a Republican, and no one in that sheriff's department gives an F about that. If I need help, they're going to help. What about people like Christian Manuel? Shoot, that guy's been pushing things through the Texas legislature and helping in that process since when your main concern was, where do I get that little line in my Wranglers? I want to have that, I wanted that line to show going down my pants. You're not going to work with him? You don't think he tries to represent his district? It really is absurd. It really is absurd. But I can tell you what, David. My guess is you're going to keep riding along in that car, especially when you're not even driving it. You're going to let other people push it for you because you have something to gain. And we all know, Mr. Covey, it has been said, what good doeth a man to gain the whole world, but lose his soul? Or you simply could have rendered unto Caesar what is Caesar's, just authority. But you were convinced, and I'll give you the benefit of the doubt, that you could be that authority, and perhaps even better. But now all we can say is, et tu, Brute? So until next time on the Comfortable and Chaos podcast, why don't we just say, we'll just keep on jive talking. Oh, Covey thinks he's right. Jive talking as long as you remain right. Jive talking.